I watched this so you don't have to. I had a permanent facepalm listening to The View's reaction to Donald Trump's inauguration, and even their own audience can't take it anymore with these mindless meltdowns. Just take a look for yourself, because this is a snapshot of what we could see for the next 4 years.
The one thing that I did think about was the hypocrisy of having a man be inaugurated to be president on the same day as we commemorate MLK. And that same man saying that he was going to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
The irony of it.
The irony of it, because Martin Luther King not only wanted racial equality, he wanted economic equality. And that is something that people tend to miss. And I want to remind people that he said that Black Americans deserved reparations for the injustices they faced. He argued that reparations were a form of justice, in fact, not charity. And he said, quote, "It's all right to tell a man to lift himself by his own bootstraps, but it is cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps." And so in thinking about that, and Donald Trump saying things that this country would be a meritocracy, you're talking about a man who didn't become the president of the United States because of merit. He hasn't he had no political experience whatsoever. He had no business experience. He was given everything that he has. He is a legacy hire. He is, if anything, a DEI hire, a didn't earn it hire. And so, those were just some of the things that I was thinking about.
I know exactly the place of resentment where that's coming from, but here's a question to Sonny Hostin. If Donald Trump is an inept, inexperienced failure, what does that make the modern Democratic Party for losing to the man twice? And no matter how she wants to spin this to pacify herself, 75 million people completely disagree with her with a resounding mandate. By the way, we break down the media spin like no one else can, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to become part of the conversation. But I want to take a second to address something else that bothered me from this entire monologue by Sonny. This is one of several times that she's invoked Martin Luther King Jr. and mangled his ideas to fit a modern leftist and social justice lens. And does she even hear herself when she claims MLK Jr. wanted economic equality, as if he was some sort of communist wanting equality of outcome? The civil rights movement was against the systematic obstacles that prevented equality of opportunity. And the idea that she's using a quote said in completely different kind of America 70 years ago to justify modern race-based affirmative action shows you exactly the kind of racial lens that she puts on. But what I saw next was surprisingly cathartic when Alyssa Farah Griffin finally broke the mold on the panel and decided to speak some sense for once.
I was watching and thinking it's time to retire the phrase normalizing Donald Trump. Donald Trump is normalized, whether you like it or not. 75 million people voted for him. He is now as much a part of American history as George Bush, Barack Obama, and any other two-term president. And I was shocked by the imagery of he left 4 years ago in disgrace. He left, barely anyone showed up when he announced his reelection 2 years ago. And now he came back to D.C. like a conquering king. He had the biggest titans of industry there. He had celebrities. He had fashion designers. He had Democrats and every former president there. And I think that it's a moment to take note of why he won and the reasons that he did, but also Democrats are not a footnote in this. They had 4 years to beat him. They had the chance to make a case against him. 4 years ago, they had the White House, the House, the Senate, and Silicon Valley. Now they have none of those above. My posture is this. You guys know my criticisms of Donald Trump. They remain. I'm going to pray for the president. I'm going to thank him when he does things that are good, like the hostage deal. I commend him. I am grateful for that. And I'm going to call it out when he does things that are reckless and dangerous. Getting the Israeli hostages and American hostages. And I'm going to call it out when he does things that are...
You're talking about Trump now?
Yes, that are...
I thought it was Biden who's been negotiating.
Both worked in coordination. Well, and finally, and I'm going to call it out when he does something that I think is dangerous and reckless, like we're going to get to pardoning dangerous January 6th. Yeah.
Why can't the entire panel just start from the premise? Honestly, it's starting to look like 2016 again on The View, and that's about the worst media strategy they can have if they want any kind of respect or relevance left. But the truth is, this is much bigger than last time. Forget even the fact that he's won the popular vote or came in with the biggest political comeback in decades. It's the last 8 years that have shifted the cultural tide in America and exposed how the progressive left has failed to win the culture war in the end. Even if you're a Democrat stalwart, it's in your best interest to understand why that is, And as Einstein said, you can't expect to do the same thing over and over again to expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity, after all.
First of all, I'm going to pray for America. I'm also going to say, he calls himself a peacemaker. He wants to invade Panama, people. Panama is our ally. They haven't done a damn thing. Everything he is saying about Panama, and it struck me because I was in the region. Okay, that region is full of crazy people who don't like the United States, like Cuba, like Nicaragua, like Venezuela. The country of Panama is our longest, strongest ally in that region. Everything he is saying about the Chinese running the Panama Canal is a lie. It is run by the Panama Canal Authority. So that brought back that he is a liar in chief. Mm-hmm. That brought back that he's not going to be a peacemaker. I mean, this guy is already in verbal war with Canada, Greenland, Denmark. By the way, they want to take over Canada and Greenland. He can't even stand in 20-degree weather. Has somebody explained to me?
But that's not remotely true. The whole saga over the Panama Canal is being way overblown by the media, and it's a real bad look for The View to just become yet another echo chamber. If Donald Trump starts pointless new wars, we'll be the first to criticize and point him out for it. But that doesn't mean that questions of America's geopolitical interest in the Western Hemisphere can become political fodder like this. If that had been the protectionist attitude back in the 50s, maybe the Soviets wouldn't have got a presence as close as Cuba. And China's growing economic presence in the world's most important trade choke point is one of America's greatest economic and security concerns of this century. And something has to be done about it. But these are discussions that are clearly far above the narrow identity political worldview of this panel, because here's what they're actually concerned with.
I just kind of felt this dark feeling. And then he had this kind of martyr-like, you guys are downtrodden and almost irreparable. You can't save this place, but I can. And it had this godlike complex without any Jesus qualities. It was kind of like a juxtaposition. But I was really disappointed, not surprised, just to be clear, but disappointed that there wasn't one kind thing to say about the outgoing administration. Because even...
Au contraire, he was merciless to the outgoing.
That's my point. That's my point. Even if you find it really hard, there could have been... They spent the morning together. They had a welcome tea. President Biden and Vice President Harris did everything we all criticized Donald Trump throughout the door. They did all the traditions of handing off the baton. And he couldn't even muster up one small thing to say, thank you for kindly welcoming us back or something. It was a kind of a gut punch of sorts.
Well, that's not who he is, right? I mean, he's not a statesman.
See what I mean? That's a perfect personification for what The View has become lately, and a snapshot of why the broader mainstream media has lost so much of its relevance in the last election cycle. But let me know in the comments what you thought about this, because it seems like this is going to be a reoccurring theme moving forward.